Hi there, I'm Dave Marks and welcome to lesson 9 in my series on walking bass lines. Okay, so we're continuing on with our study of the chord progression from the song Autumn Leaves. Now, in the first week we basically just played through each of the 4-note arpeggios to make sure that we knew what each of the chords was. In week 2 we used the root going to the 3rd or 5th above every time, and then we started to mix up those ideas. Now this week we're going to incorporate 3rds and 5ths above and below the root note. Now what I mean by that is, say we take D7 as a good example, second chord in our progression. I can play D and move up to the 3rd, F sharp. But there's also an F sharp down here. So I could move from D to F sharp. And I would think of that as the 3rd, which is below my root note. I'm playing the 3rd of the chord, but it's below my root note. Similarly, the same thing happens with G major 7, for example. I could play G and the 5th, D, which is above my root note. I could play G and D, the 5th below my root note. So now with this, we have options not always to travel up and up and up on each of our chords, but to create what's called contour or shape within our line. We can create ascending patterns, we can also create descending patterns. We can create patterns that link very smoothly from one chord into the next. You'll see in this week's lesson I've given examples of a couple of bass lines just as suggestions to get you thinking about the kind of thing you can use when you change direction, when you mix and match these 3rds and 5ths above and below. Let's have a look at exercise 1. Okay, this idea involves playing an ascending line until you run out of space. So I've kept myself between frets sort of 1 and 5. And I've played the root and the minor 3rd for the A minor 7, root 3rd for D7, root 3rd for G major 7, and then because my C is right there, I'll play that root note. Now I can't play the 3rd above because I'd have to change position. So I go for the 3rd below. So you get root, 3rd, root, 3rd, root, 3rd, root, 3rd. And again, hopefully you'll see this smooth connection between each of the chords in this. I play my root to my 3rd and I have a whole tone to my next root. Then the 3rd. Now I have a semitone to the next root. Then the 3rd and another semitone. So it's the linking up of notes that are very nearby, basically aiming. I'm thinking, what's the root note of the next chord? I'm playing an A minor and my next chord is D, so I want to finish with a note that's close to D. When I play my D7, I know my next chord is G. I want to finish with a note that's close to G. And in this chord progression, 3rds and 5ths work really well for that. Let's have a look at exercise 2. Okay, so in exercise 2, we have a 2-bar pattern idea. In the first bar we'll play a high root note and then play the 3rd below, and in the second bar we'll play a low root note and the 3rd above. So for A this gives us A, C, then for our D7 chord D, F sharp, and then G down to B, and C up to E. So I have a high root note down to a 3rd, low root note, up to the 3rd, high root note, down to the 3rd, low root note, up to the 3rd. And again, you can just take this as an idea and move it through the rest of the progression. For exercise 3, we have a specific concept to this. I'm only going to use the 2 lowest strings in this limited range. I'm thinking my idea here is I want a nice, low, full sounding walking bass line. So I've restricted my range. I can't use the high notes, but I still want to use my 3rds. How's this going to work? Well, we use a combination of 3rds above the root and 3rds below the root. So I play my A minor 7 chord, root and the 3rd above. Then for D7, root and the 3rd below, root for G major 7 and the 3rd above, and C major 7, root and the 3rd below. Now when I'm saying 3rd below, I don't ever mean that this is the interval of a 3rd below the note we're playing. I'm always talking about the 3rd of the chord in the octave below. Let's move on to exercise 4. Exercise 4 uses a very similar concept. This time, instead of using the lowest strings, I'm only going to use the top 2 strings. Always going to use thirds, exact same concept. I start with my A minor 7 and play root, the third above. Play my D7, root, and the third above. G major 7, root, and the third above. And then C major 7, root, and the third below. So in this I have a specific concept. I'm not really thinking third above, third below. I'm thinking I have this limited range. I play the root note and I can just kind of go on autopilot because I've ran these arpeggios so many times. My hands already know, okay, there's a third above in this range, there's a third below in this range, and so on. Exercise 5, again we have a concept here. I'm going to use thirds below for the first 2 chords and thirds above for the last 2. So I play for my A minor 7, high root note and the third below. For D7, my root note and my third below. And then for these next 2 chords, root note, third above, root note, third above. So I get this line. Exercise 6 is the opposite of exercise 5. I'm going to use thirds above for the first 2 chords and thirds below for the last 2. So we start with A and the third above, D and the third above, G and the third below, C and the third below. As you can see, once we start to get into this, what's more important is the concept. I have a limited range, or I want to use a certain sequence of things that sound above or below. Eventually, once you play these enough, you don't really think about them. You just hear a sound. You want to hear a certain kind of movement in your line. You want it to ascend or descend, all that kind of stuff. So in the initial stages, it's simply a matter of drilling it. Take each of these exercises and run them through the entire chord progression for Autumn Leaves. Then do the exact same thing with fifths. So run through all of the chords in Autumn Leaves, restrict your range, pick a certain part of the neck and say I must play in these 4 frets or these 5 frets, or using open strings as much as I can, or whatever it happens to be. And all you want to do is develop a number of different approaches. There's a PDF to download and also information up on davemarks.com. All you got to do is register with the website and then click on the YouTube vids page. There's loads of information there on walking bass, on beginner's bass lines, and on some basic technique stuff. Have a good time practicing. If anybody has any questions, just post them on the YouTube site or email me through the website. See you next week.